If focus is only to learn English, you would actually be better remaining in your home system and just having your English tutoring area until perhaps maybe having experiences overseas. So international school will not solve that as a standalone developing English. When you and your family are ready to come for a different experience, for a more holistic education, for broad experiences, then I think the English is part of that development, part and package of it, part and parcel of that package. So what is important is that you are not coming for one particular thing. I think that will be difficult to achieve. Because for some children, they just are very confident, they're outgoing, they make friends quickly, and they are speaking language all the time. So their development may be a shorter one because they are brave and they do that. Now, more traditionally, our Japanese and Korean students tend to be more reticent, tend to be more reserved, and they will want to have it right before they're willing to share it. But many children coming from different countries aren't like that, and they start speaking and babbling. It doesn't really make sense, but they're more confident. They can get out there. So their journey sometimes for speaking can be much quicker. They can access curriculum, they're reading what they need to read. They can even do written responses, but often not responding in that way in a free conversation. The danger with that is that then you're not embracing all of the international school community. You are tending to stay in home language groups. And I do not want children to not speak home language. I do not agree with the fact that you put them into a school where they're not allowed to speak home language, because I think that's extremely stressful for a young child. I think it can be traumatic, and I think that often that ends actually in not being a positive experience. So even if it's a short time, you want that experience to be positive. So they will need to have opportunities to speak home language, but of course the quicker that English thinking, that English response comes, the more wide their friendship group, and then again you're embracing a truly international school experience. I think in hearing sort of the responses, if the focus is learning English, then that doesn't understand the magnitude of upheaving your family from home country to come into a new environment and a new school. Not just the language, is that the language is just one piece of that. So I think if you're viewing it as an academy, my advice to you would be that actually you haven't thought necessarily about the impact that the wider international school journey has on your family. And so therefore, if you are thinking about an academy, actually do an academy in the homeschooling, because I think you'll have less stress and less challenge. If you are looking for something different and you think actually I'm willing to maybe not or have surprises with that, as I say, the ups and downs that we talk about, you are ready to do that. And there will be that element of academic rigor that you want as in learning English. There are also the academies beyond the school that many families are using as well when they want to try and accelerate development. But again, I'll go back, learning a new language is tiring. So if your child is having to work in a foreign language all day, in English, all day, giving them 2 more hours after school may not be the best thing. It may just make them really exhausted. So that mentality of having to do more and more and more and rush, I think is something that, again, the family needs to challenge. Do you want your child to be embracing all the opportunities they haven't got at home? Because in somewhere like Penang, it's a small island, you can very easily go to martial arts, and you can go to art, and you can do music class, you can play sport, you can go to the beach. There's all these other things you can do beyond just learning English in a sort of an academy sense. Yeah, so when we talk about a grade focus, what parents are concerned about is that there is enough academic rigor for their child. So with young children, a lot of the research will tell us that homework and a sort of a fixation on knowing stuff actually has very, very limited impact with children. I'm talking about 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds. So what happens in an international school is you'll find that expectation increases as they go through the school. So by the time they're getting into sort of year 7, year 8 and early secondary school years, you're now seeing some exams coming in, you're seeing greater emphasis on homework and how it's responded to. One of the things I always talk about with grades is that, of course, grades are only as reliable as what they're measuring. So if you are very difficult parents, perhaps as a school we give you tests that are very easy, so what comes home to you is A star, A. You're very happy with me. If you are more realistic, we probably give tests that are beginning to challenge the children, so they might come home with C's and B's because they are still developing. Now, if that upsets the parent community, we're going to be very careful about what we actually give. So fixating on grades can be a very negative experience, both for parents and for children. What we want is a constant video of how children are learning. I want my teachers asking your children all the time what they know, what's next. And that's actually the teacher's job, to be changing their planning and changing the learning to help your child learn. There has to be little checkpoints along the way, but they don't need to be high stakes, grade based. They can be low stakes quizzes, small tests, unit tests, so we know how the child is doing in a fixed moment. So grades are important, but they get more important as your child gets older. When they are 15, 16, of course, you have exams with grades, so that becomes important. But in the primary school, middle school, not quite so. That's an excellent question, because international schools, some of them were Western, but they were also Japanese international schools, Korean international schools, Russian international schools, Chinese international schools, that were geared up to having expatriates come to them, continue learning so they could go back to their home country. I would say in the last 25 years that has changed dramatically. So we're in Southeast Asia. The predominant majority of our students, or far a large majority of our students, are coming from Asia. So having people just with a Western approach is not going to work with the families and the mentality of families who have different expectations. So increasingly our staff have been working internationally rather than coming freshly out of the UK, where that might be a very difficult adjustment for them to understand family expectations, student expectations. So I think that's changed a lot. It's been changed now for quite some time, I would say. We are very much embracing our Asian context and what matters to our students. So our learning has got rigour coming from the British national system or the English national curriculum, but actually its content is relevant to us living in Asia with Asian families. So that adjustment, it will be meaningful for the children when they come. So here, and Malaysia is an incredible country linguistically. Many of our Malaysian families will speak 3, if not 4 languages. Often, none of them are at a very high level, and a really high academic level. It's more about communication. So we believe that having a home language at a high level allows the other languages, as you learn them, to bring them up to that high level, to match that. If you keep everything sort of mediocre, you don't have that one standout language. So it's really, really important when you locate, you don't lose your sense of identity, you don't lose your culture, your language, your heritage. Really, really important that you do that. So the continuation of reading, challenging text, writing at a level that is, sort of similar to what you might get if you were staying home. Of course, there will be some drop-off, but rather than focus only on English, keep home language going and let the English catch up with time. Yeah, one of the, I think, truly wonderful things about international school is that you are experiencing families from everywhere. You are growing up with difference. You are growing up with people who think, look, feel differently than you, but you learn that there's actually more commonalities and more similarities between you than there are differences. So the differences are on a superficial level. Deep down, we all want the same thing. We want the same thing for our children. We want our children to be healthy, well, have choices in life, be successful, not in a way that they necessarily make a lot of money, but we need to be seeing them as happy young people when they're growing up. So I think through the international experience, it just opens the doors to what potentially might be possible. I think when we stay in our own environment, those can be limited sometimes. Not all the time, but many times it can be limited by social conformity, expectations, peer expectations. And here, when you're in an international, you are going to see a little bit of everything. And that can be a little bit uncomfortable, but it can also be incredibly liberating and quite wonderful.